Shread, International Editor of the Cyber Express, and this podcast is coming to you from the Black Hat Security Conference in collaboration with Suraksha Catalyst. With me to discuss identity automation are Subbu Rama, founder and CEO of BalkanID, and Sheegihalli, Vice President of Identity and Access Management for MGM Resorts. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Likewise.
All right. So, why don't we start with you? Credential attacks have been growing dramatically. What is driving that?
I think a few things that are very obvious items, right? You have password reuses that are there. Passwords are not not secrets anymore. People just use SolarWinds 123 kind of passwords. And and there's also the proliferation of actually SaaS applications that is there. There's lots of applications. You don't have. I think as companies have anywhere from hundreds to even like sometimes 300, 400, 500, thousands of applications that you have. So you got to remember a lot of passwords. Not using password managers properly. So I can keep going on and on and on, but some of these are kind of the most obvious ones, right? Of course, not having MFA. The list goes on and on.
Yeah. I would assume that that info stealers are playing quite a role too.
Of course.
They seem to be everywhere.
Of course, yes. It's easy to actually it's easy to I think it's easy to predict passwords and also buy passwords in the dark web.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Nag, what are the biggest weaknesses that are exposing this attack surface?
Yeah, let me add a little bit of context to what Subbu
Sure.
said, right? If you go back like 10 years, so that time firewall was our perimeter to protect. So credentials were not that critical, because threat actors try to break into the firewalls, and once they're in the firewall, then they can, but it was very difficult to get into the firewall. We did not have the work from home culture, so everybody has to be on property or on site. So in the last 10 years or since COVID, the things have drastically changed. Our threat vector or the perimeter has totally transformed, and then identity has become the critical component of the vector through which everything can be accessed. So there is no more a firewall or something that used to guard earlier. So your identity is the one which is. So that's the reason if you see in the most recent days, most of the breaches are behind the identity, or that is where the lot of money is now, right? So that's one of the reasons why you see so much growth in identity-based attacks.
Yeah. Interesting.
Identity is a new perimeter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's been validated by Palo Alto with a $25 billion check.
That's true. That's true. That was quite an acquisition, wasn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Good timing, huh? Just in time for us. So, Subbu, what can be done to reduce this attack surface and to make the situation better?
To Nath's point, right? Because identity is kind of actually the critical component. There are, the very first thing is over provisioning or over permissioning, because typically people get too much access than what they need. And if somebody needs something, because there's a thin line between productivity and security. You kind of secure too much, you lose productivity, and if you don't do it, at the same time, you kind of you risk your revenue and your company. So the main thing is reducing kind of the over provisioning. How do you basically do more privileged? Right, and I believe actually also the concept of privilege is kind of evolving. Like in the past, the concept of privilege is you have a password vault, and then you check out the password and you log in, right? But now the concept is evolving to a just-in-time approach. Okay, why does somebody need a long-standing access of something? Why can't they just get something for just the time that they need? If you add on top of it, right? Why do people need everything? Why can't you give people access to things that they really need for their job in that time? For example, if you want to access production logs, maybe you only need it for that duration of time. Or if you are an SRE, you don't need 24/7 access. You only need that access during your shift, say 9 to 5 or overnight. So by doing that, right, what you're doing is you're kind of actually reducing the perimeter and reducing the chances. Even if, let's say, anything happens, let's say if somebody's credential is compromised, somebody's basically, getting it, you kind of actually protect your environment, right? And of course, there are other things, simply like MFA is a default. In fact, if you don't have MFA, it's almost a sin, right? I don't know, there are many companies who actually, there are applications where MFA is kept optional. And the worst part of MFA is many people actually put their MFA on their computer, on the password manager itself. So you want MFA to be on a different device. So to me, some of these things, are the, things, that you can actually probably do, I guess. There are most obvious things.
Yeah, I should probably ask you, are there tools that can make it possible to narrow that attack surface easier? Because what you're talking about would probably take a lot of time with a traditional IAM tool or something like that. So
when you say narrow the attack surface easier, narrow protecting the attack surface?
Yeah, like what can be done to, so that that person only gets the credentials for the time that they need and at the level that they need.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with actually, BalkanID, my company first, right? So we offer basically, just-in-time, access provisioning. That's one of our bread and butter. So we say, look, instead of you having to review access, after the fact, hey, why don't you basically, give access to people for what they need? We call it just-in-time, purpose-based access control. And we are not the only one. Almost every, these days, every identity provider, many IAM providers have this concept of JIT. So JIT is almost becoming like table stakes, in any kind of IAM or IDP provider. So now, because this has become very prevalent, people are starting to add JIT. And the main thing that is kind of missing in the market too much is when you have on-premise systems, adding a JIT is a little bit more harder, because you may not have a direct integration. You might have to create a ticket, and there's a human being involved. But even there, there are options that that you can actually use to use an OpenAI operator style model, where you can go and actually provision and deprovision whenever you need and whenever you don't need. So I would say, definitely have have an MFA in place, right? Like and most IDPs, most IAMs offer that. Have something like a JIT, right? In fact, there's going to be another podcast we'll actually talk about it, where don't even give standing access to anybody. And I think every tool offers that. Any IGA, any IAM tool these days, any modern IGA or IAM tool offers that. So.
Interesting. I probably shouldn't wander down this, but I know of a major bank that doesn't require MFA. They must be doing something like looking at device health or IP addresses or something, right?
See, I think like you're talking about the customer identity here, not the workforce, right? Customer identity is, it's a different challenge altogether. One, as a consumer, we need to accept, and then not all customer-facing industries have evolved to grant those capabilities. It needs time and effort to replenish and then rebuild those applications. That's where, and then second is like, it is friction versus the business or the revenue. So your marketing and the sales team wants to come back and then say that if we add an MFA, or it adds a friction to the guest experience, so we want to minimize that. Because if you look from the revenue or the sales perspective, they want to have as many guests enrolled as possible, or as many customers enrolled into their platform as much as possible. And if there is a friction, then probably you want to go to somewhere else, right? So again, it is education back to the all citizens or individuals, that protecting your assets is not just for your work. How do you protect your own assets? And if business is not offering, then either you demand it or you change the way you operate with the business with them, right? Because in my case, I'm struggling with this to convince my sales and revenue departments, telling them that I want to deploy MFA for all of our customer identities. And then from a revenue perspective, if we add that probably guest doesn't want to enroll, they don't want to go through all of that experience of enrollment of the guest accounts, right? So consumer is a bit different than the workforce that we talk.
Yeah.
The other thing that is also there, just to add on to it, right? Even in workforce as well as in consumer, the companies who are actually doing this, you look at people's behavioral patterns and say, hey, where are you logging from? What is your login pattern? I mean, obviously the most obvious thing is IP address, but IP spoofing is very easy. So there are a lot of other behavioral patterns that, even in CI, consumer identities, people are doing it. Like many of the banks are, banks, etc. starting. I mean, they have been doing it for a while. If not, people should really consider if you should have the account in the bank or not, right? But on the workforce also, there's and to me, one of the major things is that I want to kind of add on to this is also have SSO enabled for everything, right? Pretty much, right? And that's actually a challenge also, because there are a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of products, and I still don't know why companies do that, is you add an SSO tax that, hey, if you want to basically have SSO enabled, oh, you got to buy the next version of this. Like Notion does that, lots of apps. And because of that, you don't have an option how to actually enable SSO. So I feel like there's, as an industry as a whole, and I think there's an SSO shame of wall that is there. I think the industry as a whole is really needs to enable, like, look, everybody needs to provide SSO as a default. Like it cannot be an afterthought, right? So to me, there's, of course, organizations have to do it, but I think this also depends on all the other applications, etc., that need to do, because I think once that happens, I think there's a collective benefit that comes here, in my view.
Yeah, just to add this from a practitioner's perspective, right? I am working on standardizing the SSO. In 2025, I had to have a separate budget line item for SSO tax, where I am paying the vendor to build the capabilities so that because our business wants to use it. They have no option but to use that product, right? From a security perspective, I'm not letting you use that product unless it has an SSO. Now I am paying the vendor to go build the capabilities for their under my budget, right? Yeah. So we pushed a lot to the business, telling them that why don't you go and pick another vendor who offers the same capabilities with these securities, right? But like gaming, there are industries where vendors monopolize on their solutions. So there is no incentive for them to build these modern capabilities from a security perspective.
The other trend that's also happening on top of the SSO piece is also passwordless, right? Which I think is actually like it's far more secure, because the concept of an MFA is kind of built in, so it doesn't feel like a friction. You don't have to go on, use a password manager. You don't remember passwords, but there is basically an MFA component there, so that there's a one-time link that basically comes to you, and you can only use that link. And again, now imagine you have the link and you can only use that to access certain things for a given period of time. So in order to access a capability, I can only use it. So I think that, there are a lot of companies, kind of actually, evolving on that. And I feel like every product that offers should basically have that, passwordless as an option. And that is going to actually, significantly, change the game in the long run, my view.
So just to add to the previous point, right, we were discussing about just-in-time write access, right? We have these capabilities in the cloud infrastructures like Entra, AWS, or GCP, right? But that is for cloud infrastructure activities. But when I look from the business perspective, my finance team, they don't have to work when they're at home. They don't have to approach checks or anything. If they're on vacation, I don't need them to have access, right? So Coupa is a good example where most of the organizations use Coupa for all of their financial transactions. So today we are working on minimal access, but once it is granted, it is a standing access for them. They have that access all the time. So we are brainstorming, how do I, one is I think we need to understand the business of the organization, what we do, and then segregate business applications versus the HR or the personal applications. Your payroll, timesheets, all of this, I don't care, right? Employees should have access to these applications all the time. But when it comes to the business, then when do we expect the employee to use those applications? In certain cases, I have like a lot of union-based employees. So they don't work anytime other than the shift they are supposed to. So in that case, I don't have to give them the access beyond their shift, because now, one, they are supposed to work on property only during the shift hours, right? So we have a standing access for them, and if they have an ability to do the financial transactions or administrative privilege in their own applications. Then there is an insider threat. There are a lot of other threat factors that can basically force employees to do certain things which they may not be willing to do on their own, right? So that is what we are trying to brainstorm, like how do we bring right access at the right time and then remove their access, because in the traditional access management, it is a painful to get an access. It takes a couple of days. With automations, we are getting there, but still, to be honest, with all of the applications that we manage, half of them are manual provisioning and deprovisioning. So that what that means is it takes like at least 3 to 4 business days for someone to get their access and then be productive. Now, if I go and tell the business that Subbu doesn't work from 5 to 9 in the morning, I cannot take his access and then give him back because it takes 3 days, right? So that is where people doesn't want to give up what they have, because there is a fear that once I give up, it takes like a weeks to get the access back. So as an industry, we have to evolve as a vendors, not just the security vendors, because security is just a platform, right? But all of the applications that integrate with the identity platform. So those vendors also have to evolve and then integrate these concepts. That is where I think we will become more matured and secured in terms of who should do what at the right time.
Interesting.
Because all of these concepts we talk from a platform perspective, like AWS says, oh, we are just in time. Entra or Azure says we are just in time, right? But we forget to discuss about business-based applications. We only focus mostly on the IT infra-based activities.
On that note, right, there's a thing called SCIM, right? That was basically supposed to be in theory, it's supposed to be the protocol that solves problems for everybody as long as everybody follows that interface. Now provisioning, deprovisioning basically pretty much comes for free, right? Of course, vendors need to provide those. The funny story is, right, we a few years ago I was looking at it where I think Okta kind of created SCIM, so that was a very good standard, etc. But not many companies are supporting that SCIM. The funny part is people use SCIM to say that, well, if you want to connect to, let's say, my platform, you can actually use SCIM to actually connect, but they don't offer connectivity via SCIM. So hey, other people can, because people use it as a way to have other platforms, other applications connect to their platform and not the other way. The funny thing is that even Okta doesn't do that, right? So you cannot actually, you cannot basically use SCIM to actually do things on Okta. Versus actually Okta actually exposes it. So that is the, I think that to his point about the industry as a whole to evolve, I think industry as a whole need to evolve, and this is not just one company or one player or few players solve this problem.
Yeah, interesting. I actually wanted to ask Nog, what are the areas that you've seen progress in? Like what are we doing better at?
See, we are talking about the passkeys or the passwordless and all of that. The industry, as a tech industry, we talk about all of these new innovative technologies which can really help. But have we taken these standards that tech industry talks, move them into the actual businesses that use those products in their day-to-day operations? So that is what I'm not seeing really. Like even at my place, I tell most of the vendors that I can be your sponsor. Go do this. Like some of the vendors needs to go and get a gaming board approval or something. As an MGM, we have a big foot in this. I can sponsor you guys, but you guys have to go and get an approval. Or as Subbu said, like SCIM is an interface that was built, but my systems that are on the gaming floor, the vendor who manufactures them, they don't support SCIM. There is no incentive for them to go and build those capabilities. So they control the market, one. Second, for giving them a security-based capabilities, there is no revenue-based incentive. So that is where I think as an industry, we need to start changing the mindset that either these come by default or there is some kind of a revenue incentive added to these capabilities. That way they can start seeing by providing this, there is some revenue model for them.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. One other question. If you were to give advice to a security team or a CISO, what one place would you tell them to start at to make their identity automation experience better, or just identity in general?
So identity in itself is a real big problem. I think myself and Subbu were talking yesterday evening at a get together. Identity was not a critical infrastructure earlier. It was somewhere buried under the IT. Somebody needs an identity, just give them whatever the access they need, and it was not really considered as one of the critical component of security. So the modern organizations probably have solved this problem because they build the company after these technology solutions are there. But the Fortune 1000 companies, which might have started way back in 90s, 80s or something, they have a lot of legacy systems. It is not easy for them to go rebuild them because it needs a lot of capital investment to rewrite the applications to manage it properly. But we have a lot of compliance that mandates most of these things. Some of the organizations do it as a rubber stamping. It is required because compliance mandates it, otherwise we fail. But one advice for CISOs, based on where their identity journey is, start automating your access management, know your identity footprint, and then start tracking your shadow IT applications, right? Because there are thousands of applications that the business uses that we may not be aware as an IT or the security. But then what happens is if there is a breach, then the breach is not only contained to your IT supported application, breach is across the organization. And as a security team or as a CISO, he is responsible for security for the whole organizations, for all of the digital assets that the company uses, not something that his IT manages and then that is he's responsible for.
Any thoughts?
I think he put the nail, which was be proactive, right? So it's got to basically the access management has to be solved, right? Because if you there's always reactive where you do access reviews and access review certification, you have compliance with basically mandates it, which unfortunately sometimes becomes just rubber stamping, to just get whatever the minimal that you need to just win audit. Versus if you basically solve the access management, right? I think it can really actually be a huge boost overall. The other thing I also feel like is there's a trend that's kind of happening where when you have using using role-based accesses more consciously. So you have an human resources, you have what's the job title of a person, what department they are in, what team that they are in. So you probably know the user trust, what the permissive power is of the various applications, what permissions that give you privilege versus non-privileged, and then what the resource sensitivity is. These things are known things. Now you kind of build automated joiner, mover, lever workflows so that because those are easy things to do, because you can actually do that right right in the beginning. And everything that Nag said, but at the same time when you actually have this now, you don't have to basically have a system where I need to go and request access, etc., etc. When somebody joins, in fact it doesn't even need to become even an IT function. It can be an HR function. When somebody joins, they get the least access that they need, and after that whatever. So I feel like more automation is which I think the way the traditional IGA was there of having all the solutions, you go to a web app, do this. I think we are out of that zone in my view. So it should be headless.
Yeah. So just to add to what Subbu said specifically on the RBAC, right? One thing what I did here was show the business you are a business enabler, not a friction. And the way at least I was able to do it here was the access management was terrible. It used to take anywhere between 7 to 10 days for a new employee to get everything so that they can start. So what I did was took a data for last 1 quarter, showed them what is the productivity loss. And in my industry, especially on the frontline workers, there is a lot of hire and fire. So people are seasonal employees. They come only for 3 months or 4 months during the summer if they work on the pool or something. So there is a lot of churn. And then here I see at least 30 to 40% of my employees rotate, right? So now let's say that employee is coming for just 3 months. Out of that, the first 10 days, he's not able to do anything. So we lose the revenue out of that, right? So we are paying, but we are not getting any returns. So took that 3 months data of access management and then showed them what is the loss in revenue because an employee is not productive when they join. And then flip that into if we do the RBAC. For automated provisioning, we do it immediately. For manual provisioning, see, still the provisioning was manual, but it takes time for an employee to figure out what access I need. there is an admin or there is somebody else who is there in the departments for some time who tells, oh, this is what you need to request. If it is not right, then again they have to resubmit. And once they submit, we have a workflow, multiple approvals. So all of this takes multiple days, right? So I was able to flip this and then say that, okay, if I have an automated connector to an application, we give the access immediately. It's a day one. But let's say that for whatever the reason applications cannot support, still I can get it done in less than 2 days, because once we know what access to be given to an employee, then it is just my team which can just manually go and grant the access. So with this, we were able to show the as a business enabler, and then we made this, like I sat with most of the property president, explained them, and then this became one of the board metrics to present for the last 2 years. So by this July, we closed that as a program. Out of 75,000 employees, we covered around 40,000 employees with role-based access. We created like 80 roles across the organizations. IT, we did not do it because we have around 2,000 employees, and then each IT employee says that we do too many things. But if you look at the security guards, chefs, front desk, these are monotonous jobs, and then we have like security guards alone, we have around 7,000 employees who just do a security guard function. So these all can be automated. So like we were able to complete 75% of roles for all of the employees. So that in term, like when they start looking now, the access is provisioned the day they join. So trying to show them I&M as a business enabler, show them how it can change their revenue models instead of trying to say it's an IT initiative. The moment you say IT initiative, nobody's going to support. But for RBAC to be successful, I needed a role champion. So we created kind of a role or the job to say that, oh, you are a leader in this department, you understand the business. We gave him a title, and then we said like, you are the champion for your department. You want us to help what your team really needs, right? Now it is some type of a title that was given to a business user saying that you know your business best. That's the reason we are talking to you. Rather than going from an IT perspective saying that we want you to do this for us, right? So end goal is the same, but how do you approach, and then how do you make business as your partners? And then also how do you bring it from top down, because if you try to go from bottoms up, nothing gets done. So we made this as one of the board metrics so that it is reported to the CEO and then the CFO, property presidents. And then we create some kind of a competitions across the properties to see that, oh, for this property, they are RBAC for these many employees, their provisioning and employee productivity has gone up. Now the rest of the other properties are like, oh, when can we get onto the RBAC program?
Oh, it's a great story. Yeah. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been great to have you.
Thank
really
you, Paul.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.